In this video, we're going to run through the test results of a chatbot model and see if any fixes or improvements in performance are needed. I'm using a model I built in Dialogflow NLP provider, and it's just a very simple model based on banking questions that everybody should be familiar with. And it has 42 intents. Now, I'm at the stage in the build where I'm ready to optimize the training data using Qbox, which will maximize the performance of my chatbot. So I need to download the file, and for Dialogflow this will be in zip format, and then I can go to Qbox and create my first test. So I need to click on Create Test, and I'll add a new project, and I'll name that project Dialogflow Banking Bot, and then I need to name the test. So I'll just put initial test here. You can name your projects and your test names whatever you wish. And then I just need to go down to upload my source training data. So this is the file that I've just downloaded from Dialogflow. And then Qbox knows that it's a Dialogflow model, so it's automatically ticked this. And then all I need to do here is create test. And Qbox will tell me how long this will take to run, and I can cancel it at any time before the test is completed by clicking here. This took a few minutes, and here are the results of the test. As you can see, the two metrics are 61% for correctness. So this is a measure of how often the model returns the correct intent, and 71% for confidence, which is a measure of how confident the model was at returning the correct intent. Qbox has classed these scores as okay, but as you can see, there's plenty of room for improvement here. On the right, you can see the score distribution graph. So as well as the overall metrics for correctness and confidence, Qbox also gives these metrics for your individual intents in your model. And the graph shows the distribution of each intent by bracket of score, so 0 to 4, 5 to 9, etc. For our model, there are a few intents marked in red, so this indicates that correctness is very low. And there's also quite a few intents in amber and some in green. And you can also click on the confidence tab, and we can see a fairly similar picture here too. Ideally, all intents should be more at this end of the graph in green, so that means that their metrics are more than 80%. Further down the screen, we've got one warning given here, and looking at it, it's informing me that I have one intent that has less than 5 training questions associated with it. Next, I'll go to the Intents tab. Here, you can see the full list of intents for my model, ordered by correctness score, with the lowest scoring correctness score intent at the top. Now, it may seem a little daunting to see many red and amber intents and with very low scores. However, just start by concentrating on the lowest scoring intent for correctness first, try to make improvements to that one, and then moving on to the next lowest scoring one for correctness and make improvements to that one. Once correctness scores have been improved, you should then look to see the lower scoring confidence intents and try to improve those too. But always start with the correctness ones first, because once correctness increases, generally the confidence follows suit. So my lowest scoring intent for correctness is interest rate. So let's have a look at this. This intent covers questions on what the interest rate is on accounts, and I'm going straight to advanced view, and this will give me a deeper analysis. From the correctness distribution diagram, we can see there are 3 incorrect training phrases shown as red dots on the diagram. Ideally, all training phrases should be in green and well within the centre circle. This centre circle represents the interest rate intent. And then the circles on the outside in grey indicate confused areas. Let's pin these 3 incorrect training phrases, and then this will form the focus of my improvement for this particular test. Now, you might wonder why these training phrases are incorrect when in fact they do exist in my model under the correct intent as training data. The way the testing works is that the training phrase is tested against the whole model based on being trained without that phrase in it. So this is similar to the leave one out testing. And then, if the training phrase returns an unexpected intent, this indicates weaknesses, such as weak concepts, within the intent, and is then likely to cause confusion within the model. There's also one training phrase here that's in green, so it's correct, but it has low confidence, as in it's outside my confidence threshold, and this is indicated by the green dotted line. And if we go on to the confidence distribution diagram, we can see it here. The confidence threshold can be adjusted to match your own model here. For now, we'll attempt to fix the 3 incorrect questions before looking at this low confidence one. You may find in your own intents that you have quite a few incorrect training phrases. We do recommend that you just try to fix 2 or 3 phrases at a time, then testing again in Qbox to validate those fixes and to ensure no regression elsewhere in the model, before moving on to fix the next 2 or 3 phrases in that same intent. Going back to the correctness distribution diagram, let's take another look at these 3 incorrect phrases. So this first one is getting confused with my account balance intent. The next one is getting confused with my overdraft intent, and the third one is getting confused with the tax questions intent. Let's take a look at the first question by clicking into it, and we can get a deeper analysis. So, does my bank account get any interest? So this one's getting confused with my account balance intent, which simply covers questions about people asking for their account balance. From the highlighted words, we can see that it's picking up on the main words of bank and account from this incorrect intent, which is fine because this one does cover questions about bank account. However, if we look at the question, we need to discover what the concept is. So this is asking about whether the bank account gets any interest. And the key words are probably bank, account and get interest. If we look at the training data for my interest rate intent, we have got some training phrases covering interest on a bank account, but this could probably be boosted maybe by adding one more phrase. We recommend for each concept within an intent there should be around 3 training phrases. So for this one we've kind of got 2 training phrases here, so this is why I'm just going to add one more. So let's go back to the Dialogflow model. Pick up the intent, interest rate, and then add one more training phrase. Will I get any interest on my bank account? Okay, hopefully that's fixed that first question. Let's go back to Qbox and look at my second question. What interest rate does my savings account earn? So this intent is getting confused with the tax questions, which covers questions on people asking if they'll get tax on their interest that they've earned from their account. So we can see from the highlighted words it's picking up on interest, and we have got savings in 3 of the training phrases in this incorrect intent. And if I look at the training data in the correct intent, there's only 1 phrase that represents savings account. So perhaps we need to add 1 or 2 more questions regarding questions on interest on savings accounts. So again, I can go back to my Dialogflow model, and still within my interest rate intent, I will add the following. Would my savings account earn interest? And one more. Is my savings account going to earn any interest? change that and save that. And hopefully that's fixed that second question. Okay, let's go back to QBox and look at the final question. What is your rate for an overdraft? So this one is getting confused with my overdraft intent. And this one covers all questions on overdrafts. So perhaps this question might fit better with my overdraft intent because it's exclusively about overdraft questions and I have no other intents in my model covering this subject area. So I think I would prefer it to go to this intent. Probably just human error, and I can now go back to my Dialogflow model. Find the phrase, copy it first, and then I can delete it. And not forget to hit save. Then find my overdraft's intent. And I can pop that training phrase in there and again save it. Now let's go back to QBox. So hopefully we fix those incorrect questions, and then we'll need to look at improving the confidence of this lower confidence score question. We do also have some false positives showing for this intent here. Now this is where training data from another intent is getting confused with the intent that we're focusing on. So these two will need to be fixed, but will likely be done in a natural course of making gradual improvements, simply by working our way through the lowest scoring intents for correctness like we're doing now. But for now, we should run another test to validate our fixes. So I've already downloaded a fresh zip from Dialogflow and I've gone back into Create Test. And within my same project, the DF Banking bot, I'll put a new test name, fixing interest rate intent, and then I'll upload this fresh zip file and I can create my second test. This took a couple of minutes to run and we can see the results here. Overall correctness has increased by 2% and confidence by 1%. QBox automatically compares this test with the last test run within my project, but you can of course change this comparison and compare against any test within any of your projects here. So we can see that just by fixing a few questions, we've already made good progress in improving overall model metrics. And then further down, we can see a new area here. So this is the largest direct changes. And this list will include any intents whose scores have changed, likely because of a direct change to their training data. And of course, we can see my interest rate intent here and the overdraft one. So that's one where I transferred one of the questions to. And we can see the metrics for both of these intents have improved nicely. And there are a few indirect or unknown changes here. So this list includes intents with the largest score changes, but whose training data has not changed. And we can see some intents whose scores have increased in correctness and confidence, and some who have decreased in correctness and confidence or regressed. And we can see further details of these if we click into the Change Analysis tab, and we'll look at that later. First of all, we need to check to make sure that the changes we've made have been successful. So we need to go into our interest rate intent. And again, in advanced view, we can see from the pinned questions that these have now been fixed and they both have good confidence. And looking at the correctness distribution graph, we can see that all my training phrases are now correct as they're in green, and most of them are within my central circle, which means they are highly confident. We do still have this one question that is outside of my confidence threshold, so that will need to be looked at some point. Although my training phrases are now being classed as correct and most with good confidence, the reason the correctness metric isn't 100% is because of the false positives that still exist. And we still have 2 of these intents that have got false positives. But as I mentioned earlier, these should be rectified in the natural course of model improvements. But you can choose to look at these intents next to fix if you wish. There's no rules here. Now, let's go to the Change Analysis tab to see if the changes we made in our previous test have caused any regression. This graph shows at a glance whether we've had any increases or decreases in correctness to any of our intents compared to the first test. The white dots represent the metric in the previous test, and the red and the green represent the metric now. So, as well as the intent we fixed, which is shown here, we've actually increased the correctness in 7 other intents that we've not even touched. This demonstrates that by strengthening concepts within one intent, it's quite likely to define more clearly other intents that perhaps were a little bit confused before. And we do have 3 intents that are in red, meaning there's been some regression in correctness. And if I scroll down, I can see the full list of intents that have had metric changes. And these are the regressed intents. So we've got -19, -11, -4. So the -19 and -11, they're quite significant regression. If the regression is 5% or less, I wouldn't be too worried about this. And don't be too concerned if you find you have some or lots of regressions while trying to fix an intent. It's all part of the improvement process. And you can also click on the confidence graph to see any improvements or regression in this metric too. And I can see this is the intent that we've fixed. And there's also been a few other intents whose confidence have increased. And we have 2 intents whose metrics have decreased. And this one looks quite significant. Let's have a look at the list. So it's this one at the top, -25%. So it's the same one whose correctness has regressed. If I didn't have any serious regressions from this first fix, then the next step would be to go back to my list of intents and pick the next one which is at the top of the list. So this would be my password reset intent. However, as I've got some significant regression to my complaints intent, I will fix these regressions before moving on. So let's look at this one by simply clicking on it from this list. So this intent covers all questions about complaints, and the correctness score is 37% and confidence is 51%. Looking at the correctness distribution graph, I can see there are 3 questions marked in red, so these are classed as incorrect. So these are the ones that I need to have a look at to fix. And again, we can also see one that is slightly outside of my confidence threshold. But let's look at the incorrect ones first. So we'll pin these. Okay, the first question, I need to complain about my local branch. This one's getting confused with my local branch location. Again, this is covering questions about what the local branch is to the user. If I look at the highlighted words, the most common one here is branch, as well as a few instances of local. Now, the concept of this question is somebody wants to complain about their local branch. And if I look at the training data in my complaints intent, I can see one training phrase to complain about. However, this doesn't specify local branch. So I think I would need to add 2 more phrases containing complain and local branch. But before I do this in my Dialogflow model, I'm now going to show you another useful feature in QBox, which is the experiment tab. Now, once I've established what the issue is with an incorrect training phrase, I can run a quick analysis by adding any new training phrases here, clicking on Update Analysis, and this would show me what the potential impact these changes may have on the scores for this intent. I also have the option of editing or even deleting existing training phrases and running another quick analysis. So let's add a couple of new training phrases to see if this will help with the first incorrect question. So let's try, how do I complain to my local branch? And one more, received bad service from my local branch and want to complain. That one might be a little bit long, but let's give it a try. So after adding those, all I need to do is click on Update Analysis, and this will take a minute or so to run. Once the analysis is complete, I get the results as you can see here. So I can see the potential new metrics for the intent here, and we can see that we've got some good increases in both correctness and confidence. And then further down, I can see these two new training phrases, and QBox would class them as correct, and both with high confidence too. And then if I scroll further down, so the training phrase that we were trying to fix, I need to complain about my local branch, this would now potentially be correct and with very good confidence as well. So that question is actually fixed by adding these two pieces of training data. I can also see from the other training phrases what the potential impact on these would be. So we can see that we would get some good increase in confidence in one or two of the training phrases, and we can see a very minor decrease in confidence in one of the others. Once I'm happy with those changes, I can then add them for real in my Dialogflow model by clicking here and then copying each one of the new training phrases to the clipboard and putting them into Dialogflow, and then I would run a full test in QBox. A full test is still needed because we would also need to see what the impact would be on the rest of the model. If I'm struggling to come up with any additional training phrases, I can also use the Suggest feature here. Simply click on the Load Suggestions button, wait for this to complete, and then I can tick any suggestions that I want to add to my quick analysis, and I can run another quick analysis. I can also load more suggestions, and I can repeat the loading more suggestions and quick analysis as many times as I want. Let's look at the second phrase. I need to speak to someone. So this phrase currently isn't returning any intent. So this particular phrase is not getting confused with any other intent in my model. However, it's also not returning the intent that it should return, the complaints intent, which is why it's saying not returned there. So this basically means that there are no other intents in my model that have got anything anywhere close to this phrase, I need to speak to someone. And because it needs to return the complaints intent, I just need to expand the training data by adding a couple more phrases similar to this. Okay, so let's use quick analysis again. And I'll add two more training phrases. I would like to speak to someone. And how do I speak to someone at my branch? And then I can click on Update Analysis, and then this will give me the results of these two new questions that I've just added. Right, that took a minute or so to run, and I can see my new results here. So again, correctness and confidence would increase nicely if I were to add these two new training data. And going down here, I can see my two new training data would now be correct and would be highly confident as well. And let's have a look at the original question that I was trying to fix. So yes, I need to speak to somebody. That would now be classed as correct and with high level of confidence too. So by adding those 2 new training phrases, that should hopefully fix the second incorrect question. Let's look at the third one. Put me through to the complaints team. So we can see that the intent that it's trying to return is actually the human help intent, which covers questions on users asking to actually get the help of a real person. And from the highlighted words, we can see the possible reason for this is because we have a similar phrase here, put me through to an agent. So let's look at the training phrase here. The concept of this is somebody asking to get through to the complaints team specifically. And if I look at the training data within my complaints intent, there's no other phrase asking anything about going through to the complaints team. So again, we should add possibly 2 more phrases just to help strengthen the concept of somebody asking to go through to the complaints team. And again, I will do this through the quick analysis feature first. Let's think. Can you take me through to the complaints team? And then how about, could I speak to the complaints team? Okay, let's see what happens if I click on the update analysis again. And here's the results of that third quick analysis. So I can see correctness scores have improved by between 44 and 46% from the original score. And also confidence is improving by between 38 and 40% from the original score. So these new potential scores are pretty good for an intent. Let's go down to the new training data, and yep, both new pieces of training data would be correct and with good confidence as well. And let's look at the original training phrases. So yeah, put me through to the complaints team, that would now be classed as correct and with good confidence. So we can see here now my original training phrases for this intent would all be classed as correct, and most of them with very good confidence. We've got a couple that are below my 60% confidence, but only very slightly, so they might need a bit of a confidence boost at some point. But we can say by potentially adding these new training phrases, it would fix the correctness to this intent. So let's go ahead and add those phrases for real into my Dialogflow model. As I mentioned earlier, you do still need to do a full test in QBox because I can see what the potential scores would be for this intent. However, I also need to see how it would affect the model as a whole if I were to add these new phrases. So after adding those new phrases to my model, I then took a fresh copy of the model file and I created a new test in QBox and called it Fixing Complaints Intent. And this is the result of that test here. So on my overview screen, I can see that correctness has improved by 2% and confidence by 1%. So we're still going in the right direction. Don't be put off if you find with your tests there's hardly any changes to these metrics in some of them. It is an iterative process, and sometimes the improvements will be smaller than others, and sometimes you might even see some regression in overall metrics. But again, don't be put off by that because you can easily make those fixes and then get it moving in the right direction again. In the largest direct changes area, we can see the complaints intent, the one that I was fixing in the second test, and we can see that overall correctness and confidence have improved very well. And in the largest indirect or unknown changes, we can see the largest changes all appear to be positive ones, especially for the correctness scores, and also a good increase in confidence to this intent too. We can take a more detailed look into that shortly by going to the Change Analysis tab. But let's look at my complaints intent to ensure that the fixes that I've put in place have actually worked. So from my pinned questions, we can see that all 3 are now correct and with good levels of confidence. And if I scroll down and see my correctness distribution diagram, I can see all of my data points are now in green, and most of them are well within my central circle, which represents my confidence threshold. I do have this one here, which is slightly outside the confidence threshold. I wish to make a complaint. Not too worried about that. That's only very, very slightly outside. Again, for this intent, correctness isn't at 100% because of these 2 false positives that exist for this intent. I believe in the previous test there were 3 false positives, so that's now down to 2, but it's still, that's the reason why correctness isn't at 100%. So you could look at fixing these before moving on to your next intent. However, I'm going to leave those for now. Let's look at the change analysis to see how these fixes have affected the rest of my model. Okay, on the correctness graph, I can see that this is the intent we fixed, complaints, got a very good improvement to correctness, and we have some good improvements to all of these intents too. And one small regression to this one shown in red here. Let's just scroll down to see what that one is. And it's just a -3 for my accounts type intent. So nothing to be too concerned about. And then going on to the confidence graph, that's my complaints intent. A good improvement in confidence there, and we've got some increases in confidence to several other intents too. We have got some regression to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 intents here, but they don't look too big. Let's just check on the list. So we've got a -5, and that's the biggest regression, so I'm not too worried about that. That's okay, that's within the boundaries. So we can say now that the complaints intent has been fixed and there's no major regression to be worried about in the rest of my intents. So I would just go back to my intents tab and start working on fixing my next lowest scoring intent for correctness, which is my password reset intent. As you can see, by working your way methodically through the worst scoring intents, fixing them, testing in QBox, addressing any regression, and then further testing, you will gradually improve the overall correctness and confidence, and your model will become more accurate, stable, and effective. I hope this gives some helpful insight into how to improve your model.